Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Skoskouspo.
So that was a game that happened on Saturday. There's a lot there's so much to get into.
But we got a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about. But just right off the top, the tailgate before the game was phenomenal. For everyone who stopped by, said hi, awesome to see everyone. Big shout out to Dan and Ty from the Solid Verbal for coming and hanging out with us for a while. Really great to meet them. Dan Rubenstein's pizza is phenomenal. Just putting that out there. Really, really good stuff.
The man's an artist.
Yeah, it's so good. And, I will also say that some of the images walking into the stadium, sunset, the white caps of the lake was really cool. And I'll also shout out where we were sitting on the north end zone. We were actually pretty blocked. The wind was pretty much blocked by the stands behind us. We were
at one point it was raining and we weren't getting wet because all the rain was being blown.
It was blowing over us.
North end zone for the win.
Oh yeah. So
I have a hot take. As a television watcher this week, I thought the stadium, once the sun went down, once it was dark, it did not look nearly as cool.
Interesting.
It has nothing to do with the game. This is my observation very early on, that I just felt like when it's bright out, even on a cloudy day, I think because the skyline and the lake are visible, it really changes the scene. It didn't take away from it. It looked like a college football stadium, a college football environment. I mean, you could tell, I think the weather, especially as protected as you guys were, I think the south stands, it was the opposite effect, and they were near empty.
Yeah.
As a result,
the drone was not out this week.
Yeah. It was
poor drone would have crashed into something.
And from our vantage point too, I mean, it's the city is lit up, but you can't see it super well, even though it's lit up. Not like you can during the day.
Yeah,
they didn't even show it. They didn't even show it on TV. And I felt like all the really cool stuff that accentuates that experience was. I'm sure in person it's different, but on TV, the vistas and the impact were not nearly what they were last week.
Well, it's funny. I got to experience it because I was there super early in the day watching the field hockey team play against Duke when, it was just as windy, but the weather was fantastic. That's my day was wall to wall. I arrived at Northwestern at 11 a.m. and I left at 12:30 a.m. Was there all day, but I mean, it was everything we talked about the tailgate, but it's everything that makes Northwestern great. I mean, I watched the field hockey game next to Lauren Wattis's father, which was essential because I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I am an expert on all the ins and outs of field hockey, and watching with someone who is an expert on all the ins and outs of field hockey was essential. But, our friend of the pod, Noah Kaufman, was calling the game. Got to see him. The weather was incredible. Looking out at the field hockey stadium, turning back around, looking out at the football stadium. And then shouts to David Gold from Inside NU for letting us borrow his oven in Evanston so that I could finish off all the stuff for the tailgate, then going to the tailgate. And like you said, Solid Verbal guys was awesome. A bunch of the Northwestern Twitter sphere showed up also. Shouts out to Lakeville Lobster. Shouts to Coach from NU Football Recruiting who showed up, which was awesome. And then other, Northwestern luminaries. Alan Abrahamson. Awesome. He came by the pod. We got to talk with him about covering the Paris Olympics. I mean, only at Northwestern do you get this much stuff. And then, got to watch
really cool conversation.
Yeah. My favorite story that came through Twitter was someone was looking for a wine opener, and Coach Drohan of the softball team escorted this individual to multiple tailgates to find a wine opener.
Carol
So
Drohan,
cool.
yeah, it was,
So
and
cool.
we were posted up right next to softball and baseball. Got to meet Coach Greenspan for the first time, and yeah, it was awesome. Saw all the people, got to see all the football families and everything. It was a phenomenal experience, and we know like for so many of you, you're like, you are just preambling before this necessary discussion of the game.
How long can we stretch this out before we actually have to talk about the game?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it's good to set the stage. Anybody who has listened to our podcast, who has hung out with us, who has been to games with us, we don't go just for the football. I mean, there's so much more for this community that you get out of it, hanging out with other people, and honestly, the conversation we're getting into the game, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun for us, but it's going to be a bit cathartic. I think there's some, really important news that came out Tuesday morning or Monday morning that really underscores, a difference in approach going forward that I think helps us color this conversation in a more positive light. But it's going to be a little bit rough, but like the whole experience is why we dig in and why we love this so much.
So let's get into it. Duke wins 26-20 in double overtime in a game that was a rough game. It was just a bad game all around. Like the play was sloppy. The refereeing was questionable. The weather was rough. I mean, like I said, we were being protected from the wind slightly, but you could tell on the field that was not necessarily the case. Any kicks that went to the north end zone were, I mean, the Milkman, pushed a 29-yard field goal, tried to adjust for the wind, and it took it right into the goalpost. I mean, I guess he would have won like a Jimmy Papa John's or something from the mid-quarter giveaway. But it was a rough one to sit through, and then it went to double overtime. It was just late.
People talked about it as like a brutal loss. It was a brutal game. It was the kind of game that when it went to overtime, I should say, we would never do this. But when it went to overtime, a bunch of people, particularly in the West stands, headed for the exit.
Oh,
That's when it
wild.
Went to overtime. And again, like I said, we would never do this. I think most of you listening would also never do it. But it had been a brutal game that no one wanted to see go to overtime. I think for me, one of the rough ways to color it is, obviously, this is our 6th straight loss against Duke. And we go way back with Duke. We go back to when we had wins over Duke. Like, this is a rivalry that goes way, way back. We've previewed Duke a million times. We've prepped games for Duke a million times. And there have been multiple games that both when we were previewing them and when we've experienced the game, including particularly last year's game, where we were like, man, we are just outclassed. They just have us, and this sucks, but they're just in a better place than we are right now, and we're probably going to take this on the chin, and then we went in and we took it on the chin. This was not that.
No.
But
just, again, right off the top, shout outs to the defense. The defense played out of their gourd. I mean, it was incredible defensive effort.
Absolutely, but let's frame it this way. Look, I don't want to be flippant. That's not what I'm saying here. But we kind of had to work to lose this one, and here's what I mean. Okay, our number one running back and both of our top 2 receivers were generally great and at times spectacular in this game. Our offensive line clearly had the physical edge in the trenches. Enjoyed pretty clear physical superiority just in terms of raw strength throughout this game. Just like Sam said, our defense, for the 3rd straight game, held an opponent under 300 yards in regulation. They're doing fantastic. Our opponent had 9 penalties. Our special teams unit forced a turnover and blocked a punt. And finally, and probably most importantly, I can't stress enough, we were extremely extremely lucky in this game, and we lost. It was that kind of game. Execution. We got crushed by execution on the running game and the passing game. I know we're going to go into it all, but it's like, if you want to try to grab anything positive aside, from everything, like we're going to talk about the quarterback change and all that portends, etc. But if you're grasping for a general positive, I guess it would be that just about every single thing that went dumpster fire in this game is a fixable thing, but that certainly didn't help any of us in the moment as we were dealing with all of this.
Right.
Yeah, this one hurt. Obviously you guys were there. You experienced it a bit more viscerally than I did. I'll say, kind of going back and reviewing, I think, and maybe we just briefly start with the defense, digging a little bit there, because I think there's a couple things that really stood out as positives. Obviously, the defense looked really good. They kept us in the game. They almost won us the game. Xander was unreal. He was everywhere, diagnosing plays, disrupting plays. He has a sixth sense about him as to where a play is going to go, and he's able to sniff it out ahead of time.
He could so easily have 2 interceptions on the season right now. It's kind of a miracle he doesn't.
Yeah. 4 of 15 on third down was Duke. Based on the ESPN box score, now that they flashed a graphic during the game that refutes this, but based on the ESPN box score, Duke had fewer first downs than Northwestern, and our defense, quote unquote, won, either stopping Duke or forcing a field goal attempt on 12 of 14 drives. That's pretty damn good. There's kind of one of the big things we talked about going into this game, and we talked about the Crocs on the defensive line, how awesome this D-line is. It's obviously the strength of Northwestern, in addition to Xander. I felt like, we've gotten so used to Coach Braun out-coaching the opposition. I felt like Manny Diaz and the Duke staff kind of got one on him in the late stages of this game. They went to what the announcers referred to as NASCAR speed, really, really going fast on those last few drives, and frankly negated the advantage that our D-line has in terms of the rotation and all the players that come in specialized times, et cetera. That felt like it just felt like we had no counter for it once they went to that move. And in those last couple drives, it felt like Malik Murphy had a ton of time to throw. Prior to that, Northwestern had totally bottled them up. We said this Duke O-line did not have the horses to manage our defensive line, and it was true. It was just in the way that they held that card until the very end that worked out for them in the end. I also think our young secondary was awesome.
So here's the thing, I would say the safeties in particular, there were a couple issues, particularly with slant passes over the middle, right? That got us a couple times.
RPOs, yep.
Yeah, particularly in overtime. And you know what? They're going to go in and they're going to work on that stuff and they're going to figure that stuff out. I don't have neither the time nor inclination to go into any of that. Because, like Scott said, they were sick for most of the game and they freaking carried us on their backs for almost the entire football game in this game.
Malik averaged 6 yards per attempt.
Right. And they ran for 3.1 yards a carry. There were a couple things, and yeah, Duke had some unforced errors of their own or whatever. I don't care. Our defense has more than earned the right that they get the benefit of the doubt. Again, they held another opponent under 300 yards in regulation.
We're like an eighth of an inch away from ending the game with a fumble.
Right,
because you were watching it on TV, that was super, super close to being the game.
It was bang, bang. I know there's some folks that are really upset about it and think it was the wrong call. It wasn't.
It looked like the ground caused it. I'm like, there.
But it's not, there's some, shin, knee, ankle, whatever. His knee, his butt, whatever was down pretty much at the same time the ball was coming out. Technically, is there enough video evidence to really overturn the call on the field? That feels like semantics. Honestly, we should have won the game long before that. We'll get to that later. Exactly. the fumble recovery on the punt coverage, Theron's pick, and just the way like we harassed Malik all game. Held the running game in check. They had weapons at wideout, and it wasn't until the very end of the game, their last drive in regulation and their 2 drives in overtime, that they really got the measure of us on that side of the ball.
I was going to say, so dovetailing directly with Theron's pick and the pressures, Anto Saka's pressure numbers are the best pressure numbers in the Big Ten right now.
They're ludicrous.
It's insane.
You don't have to get to the quarterback and get a sack to massively affect the outcome of a play, and he's doing it all day, every game right now. And again, like we know the Crocodiles, it's that furious rotation. I mean, you saw R.J. Pearson get a sack in this game, but they were awesome on run defense. And again,
R.J. Pearson got a sack coming through a double team.
Yeah,
like
these
guys were awesome. The D-line played so great.
Right. And like we said, like I know there were some problems, particularly in overtime. Like obviously, like it came apart in the secondary on those RPO looks. I just don't care. It's not my priority. The defense carried this team on their backs for 4 quarters. I'm like, this is like, we've probably already talked too much about it. There were some really great performances. Devin Turner's another guy who had an awesome day, especially stepping up against the run. Like, these guys are great, and in certain spots, they are also really young, and those guys are only going to continue to improve. So it's like, be happy. Be happy that as we work the rest of these things out, we've got a great defense.
Is it time to talk about the elephant in the room?
Let's hold off on the elephant one more minute. We got to talk specials. John,
sure.
We've alluded to a little bit talking about Olsen, but so Olsen misses that 1 field goal. He hits 2 other ones in gale-force winds. Luke Akers, no shanks.
And put a skyball knuckler up into the wind, which is exactly what you want to do.
Yep, causes the turnover on the punt, puts 2 others, deep in Duke territory. In those conditions, like that's pretty darn good. And then like this coverage unit, John, you talked about it on Twitter earlier today. This coverage unit is preposterous.
They're ludicrous. The numbers back it up. 10 straight games now. They are forcing either a turnover, a blocked kick, or scoring a touchdown 0.7 times a game over the past 10 games. That's almost a full season. It's this beamer ball stuff. They are impacting the game massively every single game.
If you're old like us, you recall a time when this was not a strength of Northwestern, and it has really become a calling card. And as you talked about in our preview, John, a critical developmental part of the game for our defense. Robert Fitzgerald is a perfect example, right? This guy was awesome on return coverage all last year, and he's showing up making plays in the secondary. Now still making plays on the coverage unit. Uline was huge back there last year. Turner, like
Bruss was and is, because he probably is getting, I don't know the math, but maybe a third of the snaps. And Uline's getting 2/3 of the snaps at that other linebacker position, but Bruss is still doing full-time terror duty on specials. Like, yeah, it's remains an elite unit.
It's really like these units are working really well together, not just on the field, but in the construct of the program overall, and how they're developing talent. And that's a very welcome change from like 8 or 9 years ago, I feel like is when we kind of hit rock bottom on the specials. So yeah, that's just another really positive point.
2 phases, great in this game.
Yeah, not good, great, not good,
right.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is now. It's time to talk about the
elephant time.
Okay,
yeah.
so
this was a bad game on the offense.
It was a bad game on the offense, and it was a bad game all around. Like a lot of people, when I was walking back to my car after the game, and like even at the time, 3rd and 1 from the 3-yard line, just need a yard for a first down, and that play that got blown up and lost 10 yards was terrible. And we were like, what the hell was that? That was not the play that lost us the game.
It has become a footnote the more we have dug into it.
Yeah. I think, this is one of the things, football fans, us included, love to fixate on an individual play. And you ask any player, you ask any coach, and you ask any fan in a like, have them watch a neutral game, and the reaction is going to be, well, there were like, it shouldn't come down to one play. Don't allow it to come down to one play. And Northwestern had no less than 7 chances to win this game.
Yeah. And I think, so if we're going to kind of get into it, right, I think you'll all kind of understand this, but if we divide this into the running piece of it and the passing piece of it, the running piece of it is easier for us to talk about. And I don't mean easier in terms of we understand it better. I think we understand both situations easier. It's easier, though, because we'll get to quarterback in a little bit. And quarterback,
let's start with the running.
Yeah. And it's like, it is easier to talk because if you guys know us, and I don't think you guys need to know us, you guys, almost all of you feel the same way. We love these guys. We know a lot of these guys on this team. They're all putting in tons of work, giving everything to this program. And not just in this program, like in the classroom also. These guys are trying to do everything right. We hate talking about individual guys when things don't go well for them on the field. And it's tricky to do that, particularly when you're talking about quarterback. With the running game, though, there were errors all over the place. And this was the thing. I mean, we'll kind of get into what I mean when we finally get to quarterback. But this is probably, if we're just talking about the raw impact on winning this game, the maddening inconsistency of the run blocking in this game was just a huge factor. And you can inconsistent, and you can factor in 2 false starts and 2 holding penalties. Exactly.
Were quite impactful.
Absolutely. And you can look at Cam's numbers, and it's like, it's because you pointed it out.
Cam had a great game.
If that 44 yards is a 10-yard carry, if that 44-yard carry is a 10-yard carry, his numbers are still good.
He still averages 4 yards per carry, and he was really dynamic catching the ball out of the backfield too.
Right. And you can look at his numbers overall and use those as a proxy to understand that all we had to do was execute, and the running game worked great. And then there are all of these plays where the execution just goes haywire. And there might be a party being like, well, Northwestern had a left guard in this game who had never played a football game. Look, I'm not going to stand here and say, or at least a D1 football game, I'm not going to stand here and say that he had a great game, but there are multiple players who are big-time veterans and stars of this team, and guys we really respect, who had rough games in this game.
Yeah.
And it just came and went, play to play. And there are times where, like, you look at Cam's 44-yard run, everything works, and Cam just instinctively, like, if you're looking for positives going forward in the season, he just gets this offense. It fits him like a glove, and he knows how to work the cutback angles and where the blocking is, and you just look at it and everything works right.
One of the things we talked about with Cam Porter back after the 2020 Big Ten championship game, or maybe it was going into the Big Ten 2020 championship. I can't remember which it was. It was either going into that or thereafter. But Cam had this as he emerged during the course of that season. What set him apart from the other running backs was his ability to power upfield in between the tackles through the line, or go outside and bounce it out. He's not the fastest running back, but he had the ability to attack either direction, and it made him very difficult to tackle. I think, famously the middle linebacker for Ohio State was interviewed after that season and noted Porter as the most difficult running back he had faced to tackle in the Big Ten. And the couple drives toward the end of the game when Northwestern got the field goal, and then the 2 drives in overtime, that you saw that from Cam, it's spectacularly so, and that's what duo is. The concept duo is this concept where the running back is cutting back against the grain of the O-line, so the O-line's going one way, and the running back's job is to go the other direction and cut back in the other direction and find the right gap to do that in. And Cam is very, very good at figuring out, do I go through the A gap between the center and the guard? Do I go B between guard and tackle? Or do I go bounce it outside to C gap outside of the tackle? And he just like, he's built to run this kind of offense and this kind of scheme, and he was really good. However, John, you talk about the inconsistency in blocking, and I want to spell it out. Mathematically is the wrong term, but I spent a lot of time on our last podcast after the Miami game diagramming how much the running game had improved compared to where we started last season against Rutgers. And the breakdown of runs this game is almost identical with one caveat. So 6 runs of 10 or more yards, just like last week against Miami of Ohio. 10 runs in the 4 to 10 yard range. We had 11 last week against Miami of Ohio. 8 runs greater than 0, less than 4 yards. It was 7 against Miami of Ohio. Pretty similar breakdown. We had 2 runs for negative yards against Miami and 10 for negative yards against Duke.
Right.
If those 10 had all just gone for 0, we probably win this game.
And you watch those 10 too, and like poor Caleb Komolafe in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Look, we know running backs
to the wolves.
Running backs, you don't want to fumble. His carries are a horror show in this game. There's one play on 3rd down. He gets handed the ball and then gets drilled by 3 guys. And keep in mind everything Scuzz just said. We were getting push at the line of scrimmage, and you can look at Cam's numbers could have been way better. Cam was like, because when they were clicking, again, our offensive line had superiority. And then you would just get a couple lookout blocks on a play. And poor Komolafe really got a bunch of the worst of that. But again, it was just doubly maddening because there were so many times, like Cam's touchdown run in overtime, where you're just looking and you're like, everything works on that play. And you can be like, oh yeah, but it like went to the outside. Yeah, it went to the outside because everybody blocks, including the tight ends and the wide receivers, and the line gets a good surge, and Cam can just step up and read the play comfortably and just find the hole. And he bounces it to the outside, and then they're just play after play after play where something just goes sideways, and it short circuits a drive.
Well, that inconsistency, the penalties, this is exactly what we were worried about with a young O-line, doesn't have the continuity of playing with each other, playing in a new system. Like, this was the risk, and we said it up front before week 1. This team does not have a huge margin for error on offense.
Yeah,
and if we're turning the ball over, if we're missing reads, if we're missing blocks, if we're taking penalties, especially, false starts to put us into 1st and 15. There were 2 drives that started 1st and 15. There were another 2 drives where we lost, plus runs, an 8-yard run, a 5-yard run on 1st down to holding calls. I think 3 of those penalties effectively killed drives.
Yeah.
One of them, the team was able to overcome and get back all the yardage, et cetera. But like, this team is still forming on the offensive side. And there's a lot of folks that are ready to throw Zach Lujan out the boat, which is pretty crazy after 2 weeks, frankly, folks. I know I've been super high on this guy, and it was always going to take time for them to put things together. But this was the perceived and most likely weakness of the team on paper, and we saw it play out in front of us on Saturday night.
We should say
Friday night.
We should say too, again, we're not just talking offensive line. It's offensive line, tight ends, and wide receivers in blocking situations here. Like, no one was free of this, okay? There were problems everywhere. And their
snaps seemed like weirdly low throughout the game.
And all game, John, I was mentioning it to you. Like, Wright was like bending down to catch every single snap.
I couldn't tell. Do you guys felt like I didn't feel like it bothered him?
No, they just looked low, but I mean, it didn't cause a problem. But I think in a nature of making the pivot that we're going to have to make in a second, know that relative to Mike Wright, there was a stretch in this game where Mike Wright completed 6 straight passes, and to everything we've just been saying. During that stretch, Northwestern muffed a punt, had a holding call, had a false start call, and the drive ended with us punting, the punt that subsequently Fitzgerald recovered for a turnover. But the last play on this drive that was preceded by all of that was a play where one block that nobody made springs Mike Wright for a 40-yard touchdown.
Yeah, I rewatched that same play today, John. Yeah, the wide receiver missed a block on the safety that would have let him run.
It was a 7-yard loss that could have been a 40-yard gain. And I mean, again,
I just want to emphasize this because people are really down on Wright. He had a bad game. Full stop. We're gonna get into it in a minute, but like on that, this is the fourth drive of the game. He goes 5 for 5 passing for 40 yards on this drive. A drive that starts with a holding call on I think the very first play. He gets runs of 12 and 10 yards. On the 12-yarder, he totally dusts a defensive end that's got him like lined up dead to rights, and he just goes to another gear, tiptoes the sideline, and then he gets hit in the backfield on that last play where yes there was probably a missed block. 2 plays prior is a false start, and it takes the momentum out of this drive. It puts field goal range at risk. And then Komolafa gets blown up on I think second down for a loss of 4. The inconsistency, the timing of it was extraordinarily problematic. And again, it's, you know.
And then it's like, right. And then like Lujan dials up, and we've talked about this before. Lujan is more than happy to run on 3rd and long if he thinks he's got an advantage. Totally called the right play, totally worked. And there was a blocking mix-up, and no one picked it up, and that turned it into a 7-yard loss. And again, it's like, this is all just to reinforce that because of where we are about to have to pivot, there were a lot of problems in this game that weren't related to Mike Wright.
There are, and I want to emphasize something too, because I just kind of chastise those that are wanting to toss Lujan out. I mean, like, the reality is, and I said this a lot during the Mick McCullough years, there are a million things that go wrong on game day.
Yeah.
They are not all the offensive coordinator's fault. Like, your quarterback refuses to throw deep. I promise you the offensive coordinator is not like, all right, Trevor Siemian, throw a 5-yard out on this play. That's not the play call. The play call has a bunch of options. But if the quarterback does not feel like comfortable throwing a deep ball, hasn't been coached to throw a deep ball, doesn't know how or when to throw a deep ball, that ultimately comes back to the offensive coordinator. All this stuff ultimately comes back to the offensive coordinator. The most critical thing in the wake of this Duke game is how Zach Lujan and David Braun and all the players on offense learn and adapt from this game. That's the most important thing. It's been the biggest thing missing during the Bajakian era and the McCall era, where it felt like we'd have problems, we'd make mistakes, the coaches would say, yeah, we got to coach him better, we're going to go back to practice, we're going to coach him better, and then the same thing would come a couple weeks later. If we get to the end of the season and it's just been the same thing on repeat, then yeah, I'm with you. Maybe Zach's not ready for D1 football, but in week 2, when there hasn't been an opportunity to make that adjustment, to teach, to learn, to grow, to evolve, to pivot, to adapt, which is the key to football over the course of time, right? Like, we have to have a little bit of a longer view here. And I just that's not to absolve what was a really up and down game for the entire offense. And yeah, some of that falls on Lujan and his position coaches and their teaching and preparation, et cetera. The team looked very, very different from week 1. And I don't know, like, short week, night game, overconfident. I don't know what goes into that equation, but they were off, and that falls on everybody.
Let's also not forget, there was a weather factor. I'm not going to blame the weather and have that be the excuse, but there was a weather factor in this game.
There was. We definitely have to rush to say, though, just for anybody who for some reason didn't watch this game and is listening to the pod or something like that, all of the things that we are going to be talking about, the vast majority of them are not wind related, but there was certainly one, there was a pass to Kurtz in the end zone that the wind could have taken that ball,
yeah,
right?
So I disagree, because I think the wind took it took a chunk of the available options away. And I think that the types of passes that we saw, the types of touch passes we saw Wright in this offense executing against Miami of Ohio, which we're not explosive, we're not amazing, but we're decent. I mean, we moved the ball, we gained 175 yards through the air in that game with a relatively conservative game plan, pretty slow pace, etc. Those passes were not available in this game, and what you saw was Wright throwing it basically as hard as he could over the middle. He's not a strong-armed QB. We said that. We knew that coming into the season. That's not going to change with Lausch going in there. Like, it's just like our quarterbacks are elusive and mobile and heady, and yeah, they should be able to throw, but
well,
they're gonna be limited in 20-mile-an-hour winds, like period. The end. And I do think that created some. It set the stage for some of the problems that happened. It was not the cause of all the problems, which I think is where you're going, John. Like, the wind was not what screwed us.
No, exactly.
It's possible, and that there's maybe a depleted playbook.
Yeah,
I suppose we are kind of arriving.
Well, a depleted playbook based on like the first, I think it was throw number 5 of Wright's that got just caught up in the wind, quote unquote, and was very easily picked off. But it was like, it was a sort of pass that was never going to work in this kind of weather space. And yeah,
I think like this is, we could all feel ourselves arriving at this point.
I think we've tiptoed around this long enough.
Yeah, we are loath to talk about stuff like this. Because again, quarterback position is a one-man position, right? Like you can't make oblique references to performance and just the way that we're able to another. And again, like we know a lot of these guys, like we love this team. I would say, I guess I would get into it like this. We all know Braun, who, by the way, like Braun continues to handle these things so well. Everything, the way he talks, the way he deals. They asked him after the game, and Braun said immediately after they asked, like, are you going to consider a quarterback change? And Braun immediately says, no, I'm not considering quarterback change. Our quarterback definitely needs to play a lot better, though. And he said it immediately and comfortably, and that is how he honestly felt. And then what I would say is the coaches, the only people who probably actually went back and literally watched the entire game tape again after this game are the coaches who had to, and the lunatics like us who sat down and watched this entire tape. You can't watch that entire game tape and know that you have another viable option who was very close in the summer quarterback competition and not make the switch. You just can't. On rewatch, folks, it doesn't get better. And we went and rewatched the entire thing. It's really, really rough. And you heard Braun in his weekly press conference when he is repeatedly referencing protecting the football and winning the turnover battle in a game where Northwestern technically didn't lose the turnover battle. That's because we could have had 6 turnovers in this game easily. And it is just, we were as stunned as everybody by what played out in this game, but you can't watch the tape of it and know that Jack Lausch is waiting there and not make that change. That's pretty much where I think we've landed.
Yeah, I mean, so, Jack Lausch is now going to be the starting quarterback for this weekend's game against Eastern. But, again, we're not putting this on any one person. That's just not the case. That's not how football works.
It just sucks because, again, it is what it is. We know the change has already been made, though, and we have no interest in turning a screw of any kind here, right?
No, no, we don't. I'm going to posit this theory because this is what I felt during the game, and this is coming off of a Miami of Ohio game where we watched and described Mike Wright as a really calm, cool, collected quarterback, and there was no panic during the course of that tight game. Execution was good. This is across the board. It's not just the quarterback position. It was, the offensive line, the running backs, the receivers, etc. Just felt like a really heady guy, making good choices in key spots. And this game got away from him. And it's not just the turnovers you mentioned, John, but there's, you go back and watch the tape, and it's pretty clear of missing reads, missing open receivers, just not identifying the opportunities at the right pace. When you hear the coaches talk about, in the immediate aftermath, like the quarterback needs to just play within the system. And I think David Gold at some point was saying, like, gosh, he's got to stop trying to do it all himself. Like, there's just some things that start to coalesce together. And I felt, this is why I made my comments about the wind earlier, because I felt it was pretty clear after the first couple drives that throwing into the wind when you were heading north was really difficult. Yeah. Even Malik Murphy, who has a rocket launcher attached to his arm, was struggling in this wind. Mike Wright does not have a rocket launcher attached to his arm. It does not mean he's a bad quarterback. He had a pretty decent season his junior year at Vanderbilt in the SEC. Pretty good numbers against Arkansas, Auburn, on the road, Texas A&M. He was 60% complete, threw 12 TDs and 4 picks. Like, he almost threw 4 picks in this game. And I think a confluence of factors, like the run game being inconsistent, clearly some frustration with the refs, and, some calls that the team thought they should have gotten PI on. The case where he gets, tackled for a 7-yard loss as opposed to being able to run. Things just weren't coming to the offense like they did the prior week. He's missing a read. He throws the pick, and it just, like, you could just see him during the course of the game. By the time you got to the third quarter, the cool, calm, collected quarterback we saw the week prior, we were in a 180-degree flip. And that does not mean Mike Wright's a bad quarterback. It doesn't mean he's terrible at football. He had a rough game, and the confluence of events and the environment around him, like, he got in a bad headspace. He couldn't. You can watch him just not being decisive in the moment or going the wrong way. There's plenty of examples where he had an open receiver, or if he had looked to the right, he would have found a better option. And that's, all you can hope is that the guy can learn from that and get better as he goes forward. And it sucks, but that's how this game played out.
I think, to your point about Lujan too, one thing that I want to point out, and this is for anybody, like, just understand that, like, Lujan really, within the framework of this offense, and I know, like you were saying, Scuzz, like, this offense, it's a system, and it's a system that really asks a quarterback to play a certain way. And for someone who hasn't played in it and has played in other systems for a long period of time, that may create issues. Within this system, though, like, it's important for everyone that Lujan did a lot of stuff to help Wright. If you look at Wright's numbers, 11 of his 19 completions are screens and passes to running backs, and all those plays were pretty successful. Of 8 of Henning's 8 catches, 6 of them were screens. So you look at that 6.5 average, like, he didn't have any deep catches. That's basically like turning, getting the ball to AJ quickly, and then AJ is getting you like 6.5 yards, just making guys miss, and it's just an effective option. A couple of those dump passes to Cam, I mean, Cam had 3 for 27. Like, those are catch and runs. Like, it's effective use of stuff. It's just the standard passing game could not have gone any more sideways than it did. I mean, it really couldn't. Like, it really couldn't have flatlined worse than it did. And again, we got extremely lucky in this game. They were basically Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say that you can feel the frustration building on a rewatch, and then he there's a couple of cases where he throws across his body, like the ultimate no right, of a quarterback, throws across his body. The one where he hits the linebacker in the stomach, and thankfully, Nicholas, I think, like Ozzie Nicholas, I think was the name of the dude, like drops it, and there were
There was Calvin Johnson made the play of his young career.
Yes, breaking up a pick at the sideline.
Ripped the ball out of a corner's hands. Yeah.
Yep. And then, right after the punt block, you've got, Wright sees Lang breaking open in the end zone. I mean, Lang's wide open. He's beat his man and throws off his back foot. It gets caught up in the wind and flutters and is almost picked by the safety. Even with the wind in the fourth quarter, Wright is so rattled at this point that he can't effectively throw the ball and is sailing it, trying to hit Kurtz in the end zone, et cetera. And just like you feel for the guy, the wheels just came off. That happens in games sometimes, and I fully believe we're going to need him at some point later this season because
100%.
The quarterback position in this type of offense with running, et cetera, is rough, and the guy is really athletic. In at least we've got a 2-game sample, and in 50% of it he's been super on top of it, super heady. He had a good start to this game, and then the wheels came off the tracks. And again, you hope that he learns from that and he grows, and next time he's out there, he's able to stay more within himself and within the offense. But it's going to be growing pains for this team as we go forward.
And then pivoting, and here's a really important thing that we want to say too. And again, it's super delicate in a situation like this, right? I mean, it's like, because we're about to pivot to Jack Lausch, and Jack Lausch, I mean, literally, goes to the community. Jack Lausch lives pretty close to where Sam lives. Like, this is like, these are people we know and have great relationships. And this is a huge moment for Jack Lausch in his Northwestern career. And as Matt Shelton pointed out, like, you do the math, this is a guy who theoretically could have like 30 starts on the spread for him. You know what I mean? If things work out. I mean, this is the start, a huge moment in his budding Northwestern career. We're super stoked about it. It's one of those uncomfortable things because we all know, because people are like, well, shows you that he really was neck and neck with Wright in the summer. We knew that. We heard nothing but great things about that. We also know that Braun very much was like, I think I've got 2 great quarterbacks, but once I pick a guy, I really want to stick with that guy. And effectively, his hand was forced by what happened in this game. But nonetheless,
the fact that he made the change after only 2 games says how close they were.
Right.
Like, it's not like, yeah.
Well, there's a timing here. There's a timing element here with Eastern Illinois coming up, right? Like,
sure.
Right.
Let's see what we've got before we hit conference, et cetera, right? Like, if you get but let's ease a dude in against Eastern Illinois as opposed to on the road against Washington.
Yeah. And again, it really, there are obviously so many moving pieces here. Again, where it's like, you never ever want to see a quarterback head to the bench on the back of a game like that, ever, right? And at the same time, this is a huge moment for another quarterback, Jack Lausch, a local guy who everybody knows, right? This is a beloved guy in the locker room. Like, people rave about him. His family's awesome. Like, it's a huge moment. And then there are multiple pieces to this too. I think there is that huge piece where someone on Twitter is like, great, like, it's going to be Lausch. Do you guys have some like footage of him throwing that you can feed around? Nope.
Well, so this is the thing coming into the season. Like, on the plus side, these guys have very similar skill sets. This is not like if we were switching from Mike Wright to Ryan Helinski, you have to design a very different offense for Ryan Helinski because he does not run anything like Mike Wright. Now, he's got a much stronger arm, and you can use that differently, but like, you have to design an extremely different offense. Jack Lausch is quite comparable to Mike Wright. He's probably not quite as fast.
We think.
We all saw him against UTEP last year. He's certainly got wheels. He's certainly got moxie. This is a local kid who was who really blew up the Illinois high school football scene. By all accounts, is an incredible leader. we've heard firsthand from folks close to the program that when he did, he was pissed when he didn't get the job. As you want a guy to be upset when he doesn't win the job, but his attitude, his reaction was, "All right, I'm here. I'm going to work my ass off, so I'm ready when and if my opportunity comes." And we've said it all along. Like we said it last year when Ben Bryant was named starter. Like, we're going to need Brendan Sullivan at some point, and we did. And that's very true again. We're going to need Jack. We're going to need Mike still. And you want these guys to be boosting each other, but like that, the attitude, the leadership, all the intangibles come through on Lausch. You're excited about that, and then he is a similar style quarterback. This is not going to be an elite passing game week one, and I think part of the point that you hear the coaching staff saying, work within the offense, is just that. Like, execute what's in front of you. Let's get it right. There are opportunities within this offense for playmakers to make plays. I hammered that home, when we did our preview. But improvising in this offense, like, it's different from some of those pro style offenses where the quarterback has a couple reads, read this receiver, read that receiver, and then run, extend the play, try to make something happen, see if somebody can get open downfield. This offense does not operate that way. This is when you're taking your 3 or 5 step drop, read, plant, and throw. And if you're not being decisive, if you're waffling, if you're choosing to pause and improvise and see if guys can get open and switching to backyard football, it's not the strength of this scheme, and that's just it is what it is. So well, hopefully, that plays out for Jack. By all accounts, he has continued to practice really well. He's continued to get better since Wright was named the starter initially, and you hope that he comes out on Saturday and has a phenomenal game.
I'll say too, like, on everything you're saying, right, where it's like you got to play in the offense, you have to do this, right, and if you do, you'll succeed. Well, the flip side of it is the system theoretically can really help you out a lot. And one real big benefit of this, and all you have to do is look at Wright's stat line and the way that it unfolded, is they don't have to like install a Jack Lausch package here. It's just going to be the exact same offense. Keep in mind, 11 of Wright's 19 completions were throws to Porter or wide receiver screens. Like, they don't have to like engineer plays to get their young quarterback going. It's all baked into the offense. It's just what they do.
And that's not just to make it easy. That the intent is get Henning the ball in space. Mm-hmm. Get Porter the ball in space. These guys are playmakers and they can do stuff with it. Yes, what you want that to do is to force a defense to adjust and adapt to cover those things. That opens up more of the downfield passes, whether that's to Henning or Gordon or Kurtz or whomever. But the intent is not just like, oh, easy button for the QB. It's easy button for the QB to get the ball to a playmaker who can then do some shit with it.
There's the other piece too, and this is, I suppose, the EIU piece of this, right? And again, like, you're getting them started by EIU, but it's like, keep in mind that this was an offensive unit against the run that every time they just friggin' executed, pasted Duke, is now going to be playing an FCS team. And I would assume that those guys are livid about the way it went down last week and are going to be doing everything to execute like banshees in this game. And if they do, there's a huge potential that we pile up rush numbers in this game, which will greatly help him slide into the offense here.
And hopefully it's not just an only run offense. I mean, we know that Northwestern is going to be a run first team. Like, that was made very clear right off the top. But like, hopefully it's a situation where, like you guys said, the playbook doesn't change. It's the same playbook. We're maybe some tweaks here and there. But again, we haven't seen Jack Lausch throw the ball. We don't know what he's capable of. And he could come out there and look phenomenal. And, we certainly hope he does.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, maybe this is me personally, and it goes to what I was saying before. But again, we really love Mike Wright. Super excited Mike Wright transferred in. Obviously, his raw tools are incredible. They've, They were a huge asset in the Miami of Ohio game. With Jack Lausch, he is such a beloved guy in the community, and he's also quite young for a team that has had no long-term stability at quarterback since 2018. Obviously, having him come in and get the keys it's a big moment, and I think it's a moment that certainly has a lot of people with lumps in their throat. But in the short term, it's just like, let's just look at EIU. Let's get a rolling start to this. The team can give him as much support as possible. The defense is going to have his back, and that it's something that I don't think it goes without saying. Everyone in Northwestern community would be over the moon to see Jack Lausch succeed, and I think it's you want something really bad and it makes you nervous, but I think we're all 100% behind him, and we've heard nothing but good things, and can't wait to watch him go out there and do his stuff.
There's an interesting angle to this where the decision to announce this change and do it unequivocally and the Monday after the Duke game is not something that we as Northwestern fans have experienced in a long time.
No, it's usually like, you show up that night and, number 12 just trotted out, not number 5. They're like, what?
Yeah, it's either like the half hour before the game, you're like, oh, it sounds like so-and-so, or yeah, literally when they walk out on the field. And it is quite interesting. And I'm not trying to be critical here. Like, coaches have their ways about going about things, right? But as a fan base, it is very interesting to contemplate this, think about this, as opposed to a couple of years ago,
I was thinking
where
the same thing.
Andrew Marty shows up on the field, and we're all like, "What?" So like it's in my head a little bit, right? And it is it's interesting to watch Braun as a coach and watch. We feel like we've been with this guy for longer than a year.
Yeah, right.
If I'm honest, last year was such a sea change in the stake in the ground, and everything that we've been through with the stadium and everything else over the past 12 months has been wild. You forget that we've only had 14 games with this dude now, 15 if you include the bowl, I guess. And this is the first time he's been put in this position. So it's gonna be very interesting to watch this play out and to see where we go from here.
So, as a pivot to EIU, I mean, is there anything we need to look at for EIU? I mean, besides the way I see it is, this is our FCS game. This should be a time for us to work out the kinks in the program. Grease the wheels, get everything ready to start conference play, because that's coming. This should be that. But it is the FCS game, right?
And you say the FCS game, and that Northwestern stink gets put on that phrase immediately. I looked at Vegas, right? Vegas is well aware of this. I think the line is 24.5, 26.5 or something. Keep in mind,
that actually feels pretty good. I'm not going to lie.
Keep in mind, Illinois beat this team 45-0. And not only that,
we've scored 33 points total in 2 games this year.
Well, Illinois beat this team 45-0. Purdue beat Indiana State 49-0, and then EIU and Indiana State effectively played each other even in a game, basically. Yep. So that's the level of team that we're talking about here, and Vegas thinks we're going to win probably 26-0. So that's it. It definitely is. And then that whole Northwestern history is baked into that. And we said, again, EIU is a really well-coached team, and that's really well known. They are, again, a really well-coached team that lost 45-0 to Illinois because the talent gap is a gulf. So,
and also, Illinois might be better than we thought.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not ready to
Attaboy,
to swallow
Attaboy.
that pill
Fair enough.
But when we previewed Indiana, or when we previewed EIU before the season, right? Like, this is a well-coached team with some good pieces, but they're kind of strong in the traditional sense of a football team. This is not New Hampshire under Chip Kelly. That's going to come out and throw all over the barn, right? Like, they're gonna try to run the ball. They're going to play strong defense. These are things that we should be able to match and exceed. We should have the physical advantage. Every player on this Northwestern team should be pissed off about how last week went and want to, I'll say, make good on that on the field on Saturday and impose their frustration on Eastern Illinois. That is the attitude we should be going into this game with, and that if we do that and we keep our heads on and execute well, like, we're going to win this going away.
Yeah, I mean, like, very excited for Saturday. I mean, the weather looks like it's going to be nice, partly cloudy, 77 during the day. Hopefully, that evening will be nice and clear, get some gorgeous sunset shots again.
It's another night game, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, 6:30
earlier,
start.
but yeah.
I mean, slightly earlier. It's it's still going to be getting home pretty darn late on a Saturday night.
6:30 instead of 8, though. That's going to dramatically, like I know I was kind of negative on the vibes for the night game as we kicked it off, but a 6:30 kick is going to have a lot more sunset, lakefront, skyline. Like the vibes are back, man.
I can't stress enough too. It's 2 weeks, 2 absolute bangers of tailgates in the West Tech lot. It's not possible to divorce the game from how unbelievable this tailgate scene is, and just tailgating right next to Tech and then just taking a 5-minute jaunt over to the lake it's so great. It's so sick.
It's sick.
I will say, I shouldn't say because John, you helped immensely, but I penned an article for the College Huddle on why the stadium is so special and exciting, and why it's not just good vibes and a view of the lake, right? We think this is a meaningful home field advantage. The epicenter, being the epicenter campus, really changes the equation potentially for Northwestern. And while I believe official move-in day for Northwestern students is not until Monday, I expect there are going to be a fair number of students in town already this weekend, and I'm hopeful that buzz is amped up on campus as a result. Granted, it's an FCS game that's maybe a little bit less exciting than say a night game against Duke, but still, I think this is where you start to see the impact of the stadium being on campus, of the connection to the student body, et cetera. I'm hopeful that starts to come through. Maybe we won't really see it till Indiana in a couple of weeks, but the opportunity's there.
I will say there were definitely more students against Duke than there were the week before.
I was about to say, the student section, considering that we were well away from students arriving, there was a strong student contingent. Like, if that's what it is already, I'm 100% with Scuzz. I think it's only going to expand from there. I think the students, to everything Scuzz had said previously about what this means for it to be on campus for the students, right, like this, and build momentum and everything, 100%. Like, you can see that already, and I think you're going to see students are going to get back and then be like, this is something I got to be a part of.
So, again, 6:30 start on Big Ten Network. We'll be in the West Tech lot at 2:30. So please come see us. Come say hi. We'd love to see as many people there this weekend as we did last weekend. Not expecting the Solid Verbal guys to come back. I mean, they did have a good time, but I think they have other fish to fry. But yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients. No fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group. Compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation. And go Cats. Shall we take a look around the conference? I don't want to go through game by game last week, but anything kind of stand out? There's one that...
anything? Where to begin? Oh, our cup runneth over.
Yeah, a lot of meat on the bone. Look, it was a bad Friday night for Northwestern.
Yes.
But it was a rough weekend for the Midwest, and I guarantee any of the consternation that Northwestern Nation is having about our offense and our team is dwarfed by the consternation just about an hour and a half east of us in Northwest Indiana or North Indiana, wherever South Bend is. Oh my!
Or don't stop there. You can keep going east, man. Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Whatever. They're still high on.
Go west, Iowa City, Iowa.
On last January, yeah. But yeah, and Iowa losing, El Assico is,
yeah.
I feel like an annual tradition at this point, but I mean Notre Dame losing to NIU is pretty bananas.
And the way that it happened, right? Just an offense unable to get going, and just
we beat our MAC opponent.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Right. I mean, NIU too. I mean, I was working, so I didn't get home until late afternoon and popped that game on, and was basically like, I mean, you kind of watched it, and NIU had to pick up some crucial yards at the end of that game, and they kind of just hammered their way forward, and then they got screwed on a yardage call on a 3rd and 1. And still, the kid just came right out and just nailed a massive field goal. Which, again, you can't watch a Illinois college celebrating in Notre Dame Stadium and not think 1995. So, I mean, immediately that kindred spirit, go get them Huskies, like that.
Also, like a 28-point underdog too.
Right,
harkens back to 95.
There is an element of, we all get myopic and we all get tunnel vision and we live in our purple world and we're fixated on it, right? And it's not just us. It's not just us that have these moments of these games that go sideways. Like, this is what college football is, right? Like, win your clunkers is a phrase that I think I can't remember if that's a solid verbal phrase or
it is.
Shut down full cast or like, but it's pretty ubiquitous at this point. Like, every team of 18 to 22-year-old football players at some point is going to have a down or an off week. And if you can push through it and you can win it, you can pull it off, like, that's setting you up in a great way. And it's not just us that effed up our clunker in week 2.
Yeah. I mean,
and we weren't the team being tabbed to go undefeated.
Again,
no, that's
continuing this theme, despite everything that happened against Duke, I in no way feel worse about our chances against Michigan than I did going into this weekend.
Yeah, fair.
I just don't. I mean, again, like that, we've always thought that was our second most difficult game, but Michigan absolutely laid an egg. As we've talked about, like, Texas has Quinn Ewers. They also have a pretty suspect defense. Well, they didn't against Michigan.
Nope.
Michigan could not get anything going whatsoever. So,
again, the 3 teams that feel like most ascendant this year in the Big Ten are 3 teams not on our schedule: Nebraska, Rutgers, and Minnesota.
Yeah, the Minnesota one is wild, but Nebraska and Rutgers, like, absolutely, and they are. We called that one pretty squarely.
Yeah,
thought that they were going to be there, and watching that defense.
Oh, look at the time. We should wrap this up. I think.
Yeah. Oh, who can remember? Come to think of it, Sam, I can't even remember how that game went.
But like Wisconsin is still struggling. They played the other South Dakota, not the good one, just South Dakota. They beat them 27-13. They ran the ball better, but they still just look kind of sluggish and really not, locked in their system on either side of the ball. Yes, Illinois upset Kansas. It was a weird game with a bunch of turnovers, and maybe Illinois is going to be a lot better than we thought they were, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
How about Michigan State?
Yeah, Michigan State knocks off Maryland.
Going into Maryland.
Yeah. And again, as we talked a lot about the Mike Loxley train is going to be running out of town very quickly.
Yep.
Like we mapped out the scenario, and as Sam said, it is Maryland, but this was a game Maryland fans expected to win, and this is a situation where we mapped out that you could map out a path where Maryland loses their last 7 or 8. They need to be winning these ones, so their season could really start going south.
Aiden Childs, quarterback from Michigan State, looked phenomenal. Threw for over 300 yards in this game against Maryland, and I think we still believe Michigan State's pretty rough. They're gonna have a tough season, but maybe they have some building blocks for the future. IU put up a million points against Western Illinois. Nobody's celebrating that yet. Penn State was very pedestrian in beating Bowling Green by 7.
Or Oregon, we think you're awesome, Oregon. Probably need to start getting in gear at some point soon.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough opponent. One that this is the first time they've beaten Boise State. Do you guys know that? They're 0-3 previously.
No, I didn't know that.
And Boise's running back is insane.
Gentry's going to be a starting running back in the NFL next year. So but the point being, the teams that we have on our schedule, Indiana looks improved. We thought they would be. Michigan looks like they don't have an offense. Illinois, maybe we'll see. Iowa looks like Iowa, the team we've gone to town with for years. Wisconsin looks pretty much similar to last year. Maryland is on the downswing. Our schedule is Ohio State is supreme, and
Ohio State is Ohio State.
We're gonna get our asses kicked when we play them. But the point being, when we mapped out the Big Ten schedule and the winnability of many of the games on that schedule, Washington hasn't played anybody yet. They beat up on Eastern Michigan, but only by 3 touchdowns, not by something crazy. So again, nothing that we put out there preseason looks preposterous right now or totally out of perspective. And again, it doesn't mean we think we're going to win 9 games in conference. It means we think there's a path to 6, and we're going to be, continuing to map that out until it's pretty much mathematically impossible. But
if we're being real here, I'll speak for myself. I was mentally prepared to be going into this weekend's game 1-1.
Yeah,
I thought it was going to go the other way, but
Yeah, certainly possible. I mean, again, to go back to what we were saying before, all fixable. A big mess of fixable problems, and that could all start. It's funny too, because we didn't mention this earlier, but relative to quarterback and relative to everything else, and figuring things out. I mean, at this time last year, I was in a headspace of I don't think Ben Bryant can be the guy in this offense because we can't protect him, and then it all got worked out. And it didn't get worked out perfectly, but it made huge progress.
Well, not him, but there were 48 sacks logged during the regular season.
Yeah, right, and that's the thing.
But we figured it out. To your point, we figured it out.
It figured it out, made it work. The Minnesota game was a huge tipping point, right? And at this point last season, we were way away from that. So I think there is so much ahead here and so much progress that this team can make. And you're looking around our schedule and being I certainly don't feel way worse about all of these teams that we're headed away. A lot of these teams have warts, just like we said that they would.
Yeah.
So let's look at this weekend's slate through the Big Ten. I wonder where Fox is taking their big noon Saturday.
It's not to us. It's not to us. Or I was gonna say, how much are they gonna have to elbow ESPN out of the way? Because it does involve Alabama. ESPN doesn't contractually get to do every Alabama game.
Are they really all going to Madison?
I don't know if ESPN is. I guarantee Fox is. I don't know that for sure, but I guarantee. Yeah.
Hold on. Let's. We can look this up. Game day this week.
I mean, I'm sure Fox is. I don't know where. I mean, it is Alabama, and ESPN could not be doing any more.
Okay, they're headed. So game day is going to South Carolina for LSU, and then Fox.
They're going to be in Madison.
There's no way they are not.
It's the big noon game. They go to where the big noon game is.
Yeah, it's.
Yes, they're going to Madison. So, yeah,
they're. Yeah, I mean,
but that's not a big enough game for game day. That would be stupid. I mean, this game is going to be an absolute.
There's hide your kids potential.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Alabama only a 16-point favorite.
They're not a. They haven't shown themselves to be a dominant offense yet. They had some fits and starts against South Florida last week, but then. I think it was like right at halftime or maybe midway through the third quarter. They made a change on their O-line. They shifted around, particularly right tackle. And then it was kind of like flipping a switch. Everything clicked. I expect them to destroy Wisconsin.
Yeah, that line looks kind of reasonable to me, and I would 100% take Alabama.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Also at 11, Arkansas State at Michigan. Michigan a 23.5-point home favorite.
Michigan has a legit quarterback problem.
Oh, yeah.
I did not clock this week one, so they named Davis Warren, former walk-on, the starting QB. Not Orgy, as we all thought would happen. And they look extremely pedestrian on offense after 2 weeks, and frankly, it might be like that for the whole season. And I don't know what they do.
Let's go. Red Huskies this past week, Red Wolves this week. Keep it going. Arkansas State, you can do it. We believe in you.
Central Michigan is at Illinois. Illinois a 20-point favorite. Anything to say there?
Yeah.
No, I mean, they're Illinois in a season that we really think could go south for them. That Kansas win was a big win, and let's see if they keep the momentum going.
Go Chippewas.
Yeah, for sure. The Platypus is on the line here. Oregon State. You know what? Again, I'm going to say congratulations to both Oregon State and Washington State for keeping that rivalry going.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, at the risk of stepping in it again this week after I can't believe Kansas is a smaller favorite at Illinois than Texas is at Michigan. I'm surprised that surprise is the wrong word. I think Washington State has more luck against Washington than Oregon State does against Oregon, and that's just simply because Oregon State lost a third of their team and their entire coaching staff, who are all in East Lansing now. And if Oregon doesn't fumble the ball a couple times against Boise State, they probably win that game by 20. They have so much firepower, and they're certainly dialing it in. I remain on my corner of I think Oregon is going to have the measure of Ohio State when they play in Autzen in several weeks. Part of that calculus is now becoming, and this is me convincing myself, I will admit it, but part of that calculus is now becoming like Oregon's having to fight for it and figure themselves out, and I think Ohio State is just going to like waltz between now and then kind of get surprised and get punched in the mouth for the first time this season. So we'll see if I'm right, but either way, both these two games are like legit insane rivalries that typically happen the last week of the season, and crazy shit always happens, and it's week 3, and none of these teams is fully formed yet, and who knows what's going to occur.
Yeah, both games are at 2:30. The Oregon State game's on Fox, and the Washington State game is on Peacock. Washington a 4.5-point favorite, and Oregon a 16-point road favorite. You've got Notre Dame at Purdue.
This one has my attention.
You better figure your stuff out, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
You like I have like you wanted us to watch this game. Well, we are looking at this game now. That is for sure. It's in Ross-Ade. This plucky team that, again, Purdue has so much to work out still, but we've kind of said that they might have a little something. They get this one at home, and Notre Dame sure has opened the door. So
Purdue had a lot of stuff coming back. Bunch of transfer players on defense. Interesting influx of talent from Georgia of all places. They won week 1 against Indiana State 49-0. And that doesn't mean anything except that they, unlike a lot of other teams, did not struggle with an FCS opponent, and they got a chance to run their offense, run their defense, put their stuff together. And then they had a bye. And they spent the entirety of every one of the days last week leading up to their bye doing nothing but thinking about Notre Dame. And now they get to spend the entirety of every day this week thinking about and preparing for Notre Dame. And this is going to be a heater.
Why not ussing? Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now I think they'd be a lot happier if Notre Dame had eked out a field goal to win that game 17-16, because the Irish are going to be angry coming to Purdue for this, but this is going to be lit.
No, I don't. I disagree. I'll always remember when Bob Davie led Notre Dame to 5-7, and I'll always believe that Notre Dame is trying to get those 7 losses again. Rack them up.
I'll always remember when Bob Davie led Notre Dame to 5-7.
Yep.
Is an elite quote. Oh my goodness.
Prairie View A&M at Michigan State.
I mean, Michigan State's going to get to 3-0. They're going to get to 3-0, and we thought they'd be horrible. So we'll see. The child's train. We'll see how far they can ride it.
Nevada at Minnesota. The Gophers 16.5-point home favorite.
Sure.
The Gophers look really strong running the ball,
which we thought they would. Yeah.
We'll see what happens when they play teams that can stop the run. I like Brosmer has not. He did not look great against UNC. It's week 1. We're not going to learn much in this game, though.
Nevada they were expected to be an absolute train wreck, and they probably will be, but they should have beaten SMU to open the season, and they really let that one get away from them late.
Troy at Iowa. Iowa's a 22-point home favorite.
Troy's 0-2. There's nothing to talk about here.
There's nothing to talk about, but we would all Iowa by 22, really?
Look, I'd love to just spread the Iowa hate. I'd love to spread the Iowa hate all over this. Troy's not going to score any points in this game.
They're going to win this 22-0.
All right. Northern Iowa at Nebraska. I'm going to shut up now for a little bit.
Yeah, again, there's nothing to write home here. Although Northern Iowa is 2-0, and they typically give Iowa a game, so who knows? Maybe they...
Dylan, what do you want us to say? We mapped this all out for you. They're going to shred Northern Iowa. Raiola is going to throw for 350, and it's just going to get more worked up. It's
Raiola throws Raiola is not the... he looks good, but he doesn't look elite yet. We'll see when he plays like a real defense, and he hasn't yet. I'm sorry, Sam. There's a fair number of
Colorado looked terrible.
Oh shit, I'm throwing deep.
Yeah,
and it's worked out for him a lot.
Yeah,
Mahomes comp.
True. They've got the Mahomes cosplay. Truly is something else.
It's wild.
It is like he is trying in every way to be Pat Mahomes. Like he spent a 10 years in the mirror acting like Mahomes. It's truly amazing. But if you're
working for him, more power to him, right?
And again, they're a good defensive football team. They remain a good defensive football team, and that's going to help them a lot.
6:30 p.m. on NBC. Indiana at UCLA. Indiana 3-point road favorite.
Someone's coming out of this game undefeated, but it just might be the Hoosiers. That would be pretty wild.
This game's like, I feel like it's really interesting, but then kind of not interesting because we don't expect much from UCLA.
Right.
We expect them to be not great. And if Indiana racks up a whole bunch of points against this horrible UCLA defense, are you really going to believe in Indiana? You're probably not. You're still going to be like, well, they haven't really played anyone yet. So, But then if they don't, if this is a close game, it's like, oh, well, is UCLA good? Was it the travel to the West Coast? Like this is one like this is like an enigma game where there's a lot of takes that could come out of it, and probably none of them really matter yet.
So this is the first cross-country Big Ten matchup, right?
Yeah. Or Indiana's going out there. Yeah,
exactly.
I think you're right.
And then we'll be doing it next week. So, get those frequent flyer points going. Finally, from the conference, you got Maryland at Virginia. Maryland, a 2.5-point road favorite.
Maryland, I'd win this one. I would, because otherwise, man, oh man, it's going to start going south fast.
Sage advice.
Let's see. Any other? Arizona, Kansas State could be fun. That's on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, if last Friday night is an indication, buckle up.
Yeah.
LSU, South Carolina should be a fun game. BC, Missouri. Missouri's number 6. What?
Interesting. Yeah.
Ugh. Weird.
What about Bill O'Brien at BC? I mean, that's looking more and more like the right call.
It is very hard to read what anyone's success against Florida State means right
fair.
now.
Yeah. That is
that
fair.
Team. Yeah. I don't know what somehow it's all caved in, and I don't know. I mean, DJU is clearly not the guy, and I don't. But I mean, good for BC. Like they pulled it out and they won that one convincingly. I don't even know what FSU is right now. That team might win 3 games.
Well, they're playing Memphis this weekend at 11:00 on ESPN, and they are a 6.5-point favorite.
Here's a fun one. I don't know what a lot of people are talking about. Tulane visits Oklahoma.
Ooh.
Oklahoma has underwhelmed, if you will, on offense. Well, I mean, they smoked Temple week 1, but then last week against Houston, they looked extremely pedestrian. And Tulane is legit good, feisty.
I love Tulane as a university. I love the idea of them getting a win in this game. I'm also very conscious of the fact that we play them next season, and I'd like them not to be too good right now.
Wow.
But let's not put the cart before the horse.
Maybe we can get their coach hired by somebody else.
Yeah,
true.
That Cincinnati Miami Ohio game pique any interest?
Only if you have a vested interest in Cincinnati firing Scott Satterfield.
Fair.
Hey, I mean, your Miami of Ohio would be definitely doing us a solid by winning that game. So go ahead.
I'll say this: roughly, I don't know, 40% of the city of Cincinnati graduated from Miami of Ohio. A lot of them root for UC, and it's not 40%. That's way too high. But regardless, there's a lot of Miami grads that live in Cincinnati that have not been vested in Miami's football game or Miami's football culture for a lot of reasons. It's just not a football school; it's a hockey school more than anything. Even though Roethlisberger was there, et cetera, cradle of coaches, yada yada yada. And who knows? This could turn the tide a little bit. But my UC friends and myself are not loving the Scott Satterfield experience. In fact, when they hired him, you could hear the cheers from Louisville of thank God. Thank God for getting this dude out of here.
So they can go get Jeff Brom.
Yeah, they're clearly way better with Jeff Brom. So, again, this is, Cincinnati's not great, and we're obviously on the record as thinking Miami's pretty good. So I'd like to see Miami win, if nothing else, to bolster our the cause of our beloved Wildcats.
Anyone excited to see Dion on their screen this weekend? Colorado goes to Colorado State, 6:30 on CBS, nationally televised.
Did you guys hear the latest craziness?
No.
I heard this,
with the band?
Yeah, I was listening to the Solid Verbal, and they talked about this, that he's not letting the band play the fight song after touchdowns because he is insisting that they play Shador's rap song. It is possible this is just like a 5-year-long grift to get his son drafted as a first-round draft pick QB in the NFL. I'm not certain, but it's plausible.
Yeah, I don't know. We were so high on him, but now I'm just like, I don't know. He's done nothing but rub me the wrong way.
For sure.
A solid year now.
He did everything right leading up to like game 4 last year, and he's done everything wrong since.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Colorado State is salty after last season's game in Boulder.
Damn straight they are.
So that'll be interesting. Let's see. Nothing jumping out at the in the after dark slot. So
if I was a single man with no children, I would drive an hour and a half south to watch Georgia play at Kentucky. But I have responsibilities, so that's not going to happen.
Fair enough. Anything else to mention before we get out of here tonight, guys?
Yeah, really quickly, for anyone who's sat through an hour and a half of football, let me mention field hockey really quickly again.
Hell yeah.
Right? Awesome weekend. Like I said, I was at the big win against Duke. That's a top 5 win. Then they went out and beat a ranked BC team 2 days later. Let me tell you, as someone who, like I said, I am by no means a field hockey expert, watching the number 1 team in the country and the number 5 team in the country, it became very clear very quickly that our team is just a special team. There's a reason why we're number 1 in the country. It is a absolutely stacked team, and to actually watch a bunch of these players in person, I mean, Lauren Wattis is just incredible, and being able to watch like next to her dad and have him mapping everything out, and then afterwards, got to talk with her a while, and was just really, really cool. Ashley Sessa, this unbelievable like wonderkind transfer that we have, who played at UNC for 1 year, then took a year off to basically play for the Olympic team and everything, is an absolute dynamo. The idea that we have added her to the team and then seeing her in person, but the entire team is just so stacked. They're so flippin' good. And yeah, they picked up 2 massive ranked wins this year, and then they continue to roll on. So that was really cool. If you get a chance to go out and watch them play, the expanded west stands of Martin Stadium double as this awesome. There are two different viewing decks. Both give you an awesome view of field hockey. So get out and watch this team.
So with that, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at westlawpirates. And you can always email the show, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics. Look for us in the West Tech lot at Northwestern, flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the 4th. For John Lacombe and Eric Skasby and Sam Walter, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.